I think they're a playoff team. My point is like Lincoln finally has a quarterback, kind of like what he had in probably like a Baker and some of those guys in Oklahoma.
Lincoln Riley's superpower at Oklahoma was that they were such a great running team. The AP poll is such a joke. Washington got 0 votes in the AP poll. Are you guys willfully ignorant or just ignorant?
A day like today is why we love college football.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Joel Klatt Show. I'm Joel Klatt. This show is brought to you by Graduate by Hilton. We thank them for their support, as always. All of you who have gotten down into the comments of the YouTube channel, I appreciate it. I was down there on Monday, kind of chopping it up a little bit, leaving some comments, answering some questions. So if you have not subscribed to the channel, please go do so on YouTube. You can hit the notification button as well, and you'll know when all of our content drops. You can also follow us on social media. As you know, wherever you like the social media, we are there at Joel Klatt Show, and all of our content lives during the week, during the whole year, and so on and so forth. Lots to get into today. We're going to talk with Matt Leinart. So Matt's going to join the program a little bit later, and Matty Ice is going to be talking about this USC team. We've got USC this Saturday. Big Noon Saturday is going to be live from Champaign, Illinois, as USC goes on the road to face Illinois in a ranked matchup in the Big Ten. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll break some of that down with Matt later in the program. Also get his thoughts on some of this breaking news that has happened. I'm also going to start to look at each conference today and tier each conference 1, 2, and 3. Who's at the top tier, the second tier, and the third tier in each of these conferences as it relates to the top end of each of these conferences. And these are going to differ a little bit than with my rankings. But first, we've got to get to some of the breaking news in college football, and both of these pieces of news, not great. Listen, midweek news is never great in college football, and this is no different. John Mateer out indefinitely, probably for about a month after hand surgery. Reportedly hurt it in that Auburn game. They think it's going to be about a month after this hand surgery, and I'm totally bummed for this guy because he was playing as well as anybody in the country. I think all of us know that. That's facts. Those are facts. They don't beat Michigan without John Mateer. They don't beat Auburn without John Mateer. In so many ways, he was Oklahoma. Now, I don't want to take anything away from their defense. I think their defense has been sensational. Up front, they've been terrific. 10 sacks against Auburn and Jackson Arnold last weekend. They were terrific on the defensive side, and now that defense is going to have to be even better. They're going to have to be even more dominant and control the entire pace and tempo of the game, because without Mateer, they're going to have an inability to do that with their offense. You know, their offense, as good as it's been to this point, I think now there's some real concern. Michael Hawkins, the backup, is a guy that started 4 games last season. He's going to be taking over now, just like he took over for Jackson Arnold a year ago. And there's some dual threat aspects about Hawkins, but he's not Mateer. You know, Mateer in a lot of ways, and I've said this, put a cape on his back against Michigan. Again, they don't beat the Wolverines. As well as their defense played, it was Mateer that made the plays necessary. I talked Monday in Monday's show, and if you haven't listened to Monday's show, I dropped my latest top 10, talked about all the big games from last weekend. So please go check it out. You can find it on the YouTube channel. I was optimistic about OU moving forward, but without Mateer, at least for the next few weeks, however long it's going to be, 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks, that optimism kind of goes out the window. And I know that that's unfortunate, but it's the truth. The problem is that the defense is going to be under so much pressure to completely own the game. You know, ask Iowa how that goes. It's just difficult. My question for their offense, do they have the answers without Mateer on the field? Running the football has been such a challenge for OU. Numbers bear that out. The running backs last week against Auburn, 12 carries, 13 yards. 13 yards. In fact, if you look at this entire season and you parse out the quarterback run from what they have done with their running backs are 130th in the country as a group in yards per carry. They can't do anything without Mateer in the run game. I don't know what they're going to do without him on the field. They certainly are not going to beat Texas. That's in a couple of weeks. Thankfully for them, they're going to have Kent State. Then they get Texas. Then they have to go to South Carolina. And then the gauntlet starts. The back end of their schedule is brutal. They're going to go Ole Miss, Tennessee. They have Bama on there, LSU on there. They're going to have Missouri on there. Like it gets pretty daunting for Oklahoma, which in some cases, the timing of this is working out, even though he's got to miss Red River. Maybe he can get back before South Carolina optimistically not South Carolina, before maybe the Ole Miss game, October 25th, optimistically. And then for them, I think that they definitely need him before November 1st when they have to go to Neyland and face Tennessee. They're not beating Texas without Mateer. They're certainly not beating Ole Miss without Mateer. And they're certainly not beating Tennessee without Mateer. So unless he gets back on the field, this is the season for OU. This is the season. And that's too bad because he was leading in the Heisman race. He was doing so many things well and providing a lot of optimism, at least for me, around OU. Also in Oklahoma, a firing. Mike Gundy gets fired from Oklahoma State. Just real quickly, I think we kind of understood that this was a possibility and probably going to happen. Personal note, like this is a sad one for me. He's one of the longest tenured coaches. So now there's just not a lot of guys that had their jobs when I started doing this job. And he also, in his first year, became a head coach as a young man before he was 40. And famously, I got to play against him. My senior year was his first year as the coach for Oklahoma State. And so we've always had that, and we've always gotten to chat about that. He has always been incredibly thoughtful with me personally. His wife has been incredibly thoughtful to our family. When my wife started having boys, just like the Gundys had boys, she actually wrote my wife a letter and just said, hey, like, I know being married to someone in football is not the easiest thing in the fall, but just a word of encouragement, raise those boys right. And I'll always remember that. And I hope that coach sees this because I'm really grateful for him and his family. I think that this is a bummer, man. This guy is the all-time winningest coach at Oklahoma State by over 100 games, and he's let go before October. I just don't love it. I don't love it. I know that there was, things going on behind the scenes that there was some disagreements and so on and so forth, but ugly side of college football. I don't love it. Coach, just want you to know, man, I respect you and will always think highly of you. All right, let's get into these tiers. So again, every single conference, and then I'm also going to do the group of 6 as a whole. So here's what I want to do is I want to look at each conference in 3 distinct tiers. And these are only the elite teams, the upper level teams of each of these conferences. What I didn't want to do is go through this exercise and give you guys just like, hey, here's the 12 teams in each conference. No. Let's be selective. Let's actually look at tiers like who's the favorite or favorites. Okay, some of these conferences, maybe it's just a favorite. Maybe it's just one team in tier 1. Like it's really got to be elite to be tier 1. Tier 2, contenders. Teams that we can absolutely see contending for the conference title. And then tier 3 would be right in the mix. Some things break their way. Maybe they wind up in the conference championship game. Who knows? Okay? So we're going to try to be selective in this. I didn't want to put everybody in these tiers. I just didn't. I think these conferences are too big. So let's take the top end of these conferences, which we know now. Let's be honest. Let's look at these conferences after a month of play, almost a month of play, and really look at them with some scrutiny. Okay, so tier 1 is the favorite or favorites. Tier 2, the contenders. Tier 3, in the mix. Just a quick note. These are not going to align perfectly with my top 10 because my top 10 is about more where you've kind of earned your spot, whereas these tiers are going to be what I genuinely believe about your chances within your conference, and some of it has to do with the schedule that they've got in front of them. Okay, so here we go. Let's start in the Big Ten. Big Ten. Tier 1, I've got 2 teams in Tier 1. That's right, only 2. Even though there's 3 elite teams as the rankings have them, I think that the Tier 1 favorites are Ohio State and Oregon. Ohio State and Oregon. I think it's scary that Ohio State lost 14 draft picks and they're still as good as they are right now with a brand new quarterback who's a redshirt freshman. Smith has still been the best player in college football. Downs has been great. The defense is maybe even better than a year ago, which is wild. And as Sayan gets better and they let him kind of out of his shell and they bring him along, this offense looks scary. They've got depth at running back. They're running the football well. They're throwing the football well. It's scary to me how good Ohio State looks after losing 14 draft picks. Oregon, meanwhile, built the right way. There's one concern I have for Oregon is that they didn't stop the run very well against Northwestern. They're going to have to do that this week against Penn State for sure if they want to go into Penn State and win in a whiteout. But their quarterback, Dante Moore, again, especially with the Mateer injury, this guy is going to be right there in the Heisman Trophy race. He's that talented. I'm just telling you, folks, he is that talented. Prepares well. I know how he's coached. He's coached very well. He understands not just the what they're doing or how they're doing it, but the why they're doing it. And that's really the secret sauce for quarterbacks to take them to the next level, that understanding of why. He has it. I like Oregon a lot. Tier 2, the contenders in the Big Ten. I like 2 of them, Penn State and Indiana. Now, some of you might say to yourself, like, why in the world isn't Penn State on Tier 1? I totally understand that sentiment. However, Oregon's the defending Big Ten champion, Ohio State is the defending national champion, and Penn State still hasn't proven in recent vintage to be able to win a matchup game like they're going to have this week against Oregon. So, as we go into that game, I'm just leaving room for growth. Penn State has been inconsistent this year, even though they have been dominant at times. They have sleptwalked through other areas of their games against inferior opponents. Drew Aller has not looked like a quarterback that like I thought he would look in terms of just owning the game from the pocket. So that's why they're on Tier 2. Does that mean that they're bad? Absolutely not. Again, these are the contenders. They win this weekend, boom, they just flip-flop with Oregon in the Tier 1. But I wanted to be selective. And if we are being honest, even though Penn State was in the national semifinal a year ago, they didn't win a game that we would call a matchup game. They were significantly better from a roster standpoint than Boise State and SMU, who they beat in the playoff. Once they got up against Notre Dame, they lost. Tight game. They lost to Ohio State last year. Tight game. They lost to Oregon last year. Tight game. They need to find a way to win one of those games before they get off of this tier. And then Indiana is going to be on this tier. So Indiana at 4-0, they have elevated themselves over the last couple of years. They were 15-2, very similar to Penn State, by the way. They're beating everybody that they should, and then they have struggled in the matchup games. And maybe you would say an Illinois is a matchup game, as Illinois was. And I hope you understand what I mean by matchup games. When talent is equated across sidelines. A lot of teams can win when they have more talent than the other team. But when talent becomes equated, can you go out there and win the football game? That's the question. Indiana, they're 15-2. Their 2 losses at Ohio State, at Notre Dame. So they have to do what Penn State has to do, level up and win one of those matchup games. They have road games against Penn State and Oregon this year. We're going to see if they're for real. Right now, they're on Tier 2. Let's get to Tier 3. I think this is where it gets interesting for me in the Big Ten. In the mix, I think that I'm going to start with Michigan. Michigan's certainly in the mix. I think Washington is in the mix. And I think USC is in the mix. Those are my 3 teams. Let me start with Michigan. That was a very impressive performance against Nebraska. They totally owned them at the line of scrimmage, ran it for nearly 300 yards. They got 7 sacks on defense. And the score, I didn't think was quite indicative of the game that was played. The score was much closer than what the game that was played. Underwood is going to be a star. He's going to continue to develop. And if they've already got that mindset of being physical, let's just put it this way. They are so much further ahead at this point this year than they were at this point last year. And I know that can seem obvious, but certainly trending in the right direction. And I think Michigan is certainly in the mix. Do you want to play that run game with Justice Haynes? Probably not. Now let's get to Washington. Hey, can Washington get a little respect? The AP poll is such a joke. Washington got 0 votes in the AP poll. Are you guys willfully ignorant or just ignorant? Because that's a joke. You mean to tell me that there are teams down there getting 3 and 4 votes that would get absolutely slaughtered by Washington. Please tell me you just forget that they're in college football. Please tell me that this is a sign that you don't stay up late for games on the West Coast. Please tell me that you just haven't seen the Huskies play because they're all the way tucked up there in the great Northwest, because they've got the number 2 scoring offense in college football at 58 points per game. They got a hell of a quarterback, a coach that has built a winner before. Coleman is terrific. He's running the football well. This is a legitimate team with the second longest win streak at home in all of college football. And they don't have 1 vote in the AP poll. What a joke. What a joke. The AP poll continues to show and reveal why it is so bad. Why do we even talk about it? I don't know. I shouldn't even give it the oxygen that I'm giving it right now. It's just frustration. Tell me you don't watch the sport without telling me you don't watch the sport. How do I know? No one put Washington on their top 25. That's a joke. That's an absolute joke. If you've listened to this show, you will have known that it's been since the offseason and since the summertime that I've been talking about Washington as a dark horse. In fact, I listed teams like Missouri in the SEC as a dark horse for the college football playoff. I listed teams like Washington in the Big Ten as a dark horse for the college football playoff. I listed a team like Georgia Tech as a dark horse for the college football playoff out of the ACC. We have been shining lights on these teams. It's not our fault that the AP voters can't do their job. Washington is very good, folks. Very good. That game against Ohio State this weekend up in Seattle started out as like an 11-point line. It's been bet all the way down. Why? Because the public is smarter than the AP. Period. Facts. I don't know how else to put it. The public is betting this down because they know Washington has a very good football team. I'm a big believer that Washington maybe not wins the game, but listen, Damon Williams, top 5 in the country in total yards per game at 333. Jonah Coleman, top 10 in the country in rushing at 116 per game. Denzel Boston is coming off a 100-yard, 2-touchdown game against Wazoo. They've got a huge opportunity this week. And I know I spent a lot of time on them, but that's apparently because nobody knows about Washington. This is a very good football team, and I remain shocked that no one will pay attention. Another underrated team, and we'll talk to Matt later in the program, Matt Leinart, former USC quarterback, is his former team, USC. This looks like a team that has some real staying power. They are much different than they have been in the last couple of years because they're doing some of the fundamental things that I feel you need to do to be a quality team, and they're doing them well, namely running the football, stopping the run. So they're much better at the line of scrimmage than they have been in the last couple of years. And it looks like a Lincoln Riley offense that we saw back at Oklahoma, where they were both excelling in the run game and in the pass game. They're first in yards per play in all of college football at just over 9. They're second in yards per pass, third in yards per rush. So what do you defend? Wayman Jordan, and I know Matt will bring him up, but Wayman Jordan is a legitimate Heisman contender in my estimation. He has been terrific. Junior college transfer that has come in and really transformed their run game. Eli Sanders, number 1 running back you're watching on YouTube right now. He's got electricity when he carries the football. Jaden Maiava has played outstanding ball. He's got that combination that they had at OU of a guy that will play within the system and pick you apart from the pocket as a passer, but also can hurt you with his legs. And it's that combination that has made them very dangerous. And by the way, their defensive line is much bigger and much better against the run than what we have seen in previous seasons. They're much bigger, and they're now a factor. Tied for most sacks in the country, USC is with 16. So watch out. Watch out for USC, and those are my tiers. So again, I wanted to be selective, and I wanted to take teams that I really believed in that could make a push, had the opportunities to make a push towards a potential conference crown or a CFP berth. Those are my tiers in the Big Ten. Took a long time doing that. Probably need to speed up a little bit here. SEC. The favorite in the SEC. This was hard because I'm looking at this. I just said I was going to go fast, and then I'm taking a nice little pause here. I think that there's only one. And it was proven out when Georgia came back 21-7, down against Tennessee, and came back and won that game on the road. The favorite in the SEC is Georgia. Why? Someone's got to beat Georgia. And it's been proven to be very difficult. Now, Alabama has had their number. Kirby Smart is 1-6 against Alabama, and I understand that. Now, granted, I believe this is right. I don't think any one of those games has actually taken place in Athens. So they're 1-6 in a bunch of neutrals and in Tuscaloosa. Now they get them in Athens, and could be a long night for Alabama, who struggles on the road dating back to last year. We have seen them struggle on the road. Vandy last year, Oklahoma last year, Florida State this year. Not a great team on the road. Now they got to go on the road and face Georgia. That's my tier 1 team in the SEC. Really impressed with Gunnar Stockton. Played well in a big-time environment in Neyland Stadium. Okay, now tier 2, the contenders. And again, this is not going to follow the rankings. So this is who I think has separated themselves out as a clear tier 2 in the SEC. I'm going to start with Alabama. Then you go Tennessee, LSU, and Texas A&M. That's the tier 2 contenders in the SEC. Alabama, I still believe in this team. I have really liked the response that they've given post Week 1's loss to Florida State. Now, they don't have a ton of wiggle room, in particular with their schedule, but Ty Simpson looks like a real bona fide star at quarterback. And when you give him Ryan Williams on the outside, when you give him some of those other threats that they have on the outside, like, he's really good. Some of the passes that he threw against Wisconsin were just perfect, right? Perfect. They get Jam Miller back at running back. They get Tim Keenan back at defensive tackle. So they're getting healthier. And I think that's a dangerous team. Tennessee, meanwhile, the fact that they took Georgia right down to the wire, albeit at home, puts them in tier 2. Joey Aguilar looks great, and he's a great fit for that system. The wide receivers are really good. They've got speed. They've got length. They can take you down the field, and they can bury you really in a lot of ways, and they did that to Georgia for the most part. They just weren't able to close out the game. LSU, I'm still going to keep in tier 2, and I didn't love the fact that I kept them in tier 2 because let's face it, like, it hasn't looked great, and their resume continues to get holes punched in it as Clemson continues to lose. So, like, Miami looked better against Florida than LSU looked against Florida. Syracuse just did the same thing to Clemson that LSU did to Clemson. So all of a sudden, what we thought about after week 1 and that win over Clemson and what we thought was this top 5 matchup and, oh man, this was so great, doesn't look like that anymore. What I have loved about LSU is their turnaround on the defensive side. My concern now is all of a sudden the offensive side. But don't ask Brian Kelly about it. Don't you dare. And certainly don't do it with the first question. You're spoiled. You know what? You're spoiled. That's what you're thinking about. Spoiled. My next tier 2 team is Texas A&M. Offense looked incredible against Notre Dame on the road. Marcel Reed, Craver on the outside, Concepcion on the outside. They've got real speed, and they're going to be a real threat in this conference. My concern would be on the defensive side because they obviously gave up a ton of points in that game. But that's my tier 2 contenders, and now we move on to the tier 3 in the mix. In the mix in the SEC, I think it's Texas, OU, and Missouri. And you might be thinking to yourself, like, man, this is a huge fall for Texas. Well, has Texas really inspired any confidence so far this year? They lose on the road to Ohio State. Then they play really sloppy and lazy football for a couple of weeks before finally coming back to kind of the land of the living against Sam Houston. Now, if they can catapult themselves or find the level of consistency that they played with against Sam Houston and take it forward, they'll easily raise up this tier. No doubt about it. If you're just looking at their defense is one of the best in the country and will remain so. They got a huge bump, by the way. The fact that John Mateer is going to be out, I just talked about that. But now all of a sudden, Red River just doesn't look quite as daunting. Oklahoma, I just talked about them. To be honest, if I probably would have put them in the second tier, save for the Mateer injury. So they're coming down in the mix. I talked about the OU at the beginning of this show. I'm nervous for OU. They're not going to beat a quality opponent without John Mateer. They do not have enough answers on the offensive side to get into a game where they are unable to run the football with their running backs. They needed Mateer to put a cape on, and now he's gone. So, like, what do we do when Batman won't come around? I don't know. I don't know. Missouri. Watch out for Missouri. Sneaky. Talked about them as a sleeper team, like I said earlier this summer. They beat South Carolina last week. Ahmad Hardy is running the football as well as anybody in the country, along with Wayman Jordan at USC, second in the country in rushing. The defense has been very good. The defensive line has been very stout, getting pressure on the quarterback. They've got Zion Young up there, like really good players. So don't sleep on Missouri. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, like, there's a lot of ranked teams in this conference that aren't on the tiers. Joel, what's going on? Well, Ole Miss didn't make the cut because I don't believe that Ole Miss is as good as what their ranking is. We have seen this now twice already this year where the AP poll blindly ranks someone in a particular spot in the preseason based on nothing and then won't adjust once they see games. I think Illinois was overrated at 9. I think South Carolina was overrated at 11 when both of those teams lost. And now I feel the same about Ole Miss. This is not the 13th best team in the country. Now, I could be wrong. I was wrong about a lot this year so far. That's the way I feel. We'll see how they deal with playing LSU, but that's kind of how I feel about Ole Miss. Let's move on to the Big 12. The Big 12. All right. Tier 1 in the Big 12 after last weekend is one team, and that is Texas Tech. Talked a lot about them on the Monday show. Please go back and check out that Monday show because I was really impressed with Texas Tech. I actually texted Coach McGuire, and so the biggest compliment I can pay a coach is this. I've always believed that teams take on the character of their coach. So when I see a team that loves each other, plays physical, and plays really hard, that tells me that they have a great coach. That's what I texted Joey McGuire, and that's what I believe. And this is the best team in the Big 12. Their defensive line is really good. What they invested in the transfer portal has paid dividends. They've got depth at quarterback with Will Hammond coming in and putting just absolute dimes out there late. Their offensive line is solid. They got playmakers everywhere. And I talked about the depth of their offensive scheme on Monday. Please go check that out. Really impressed with them. And they're, I think, the class of the Big 12 at this point. Tier 2 then becomes the contenders. I think it's 3 teams: Iowa State, Utah, and TCU. Watch out for TCU. Iowa State is a tough team to beat. Becht always gives them a shot because he's such an experienced quarterback and a gamer in the biggest moments in the fourth quarter. Utah, I know that they lost at home, but listen, Tech is very good, very good. And that game was closer than the score indicated with a couple of scores late. Utah is still going to be a very difficult team to beat because they will be able to run the football on a defensive line that is not as dominant as Tech. Their defense is very salty. I know they got worn out late in that game playing so much man coverage, but that's still going to be a tough team to beat. Not everyone is going to be able to do to Utah what Tech was able to do to Utah last week. And then TCU, don't sleep on the Horned Frogs. Hoover leads the country in passing. Nice win against SMU last week. And listen, we saw them in week 1 throttle North Carolina in a game where everyone was more interested in Bill Belichick and North Carolina. But now TCU just continues to get better, win football games, and put themselves in a position to play for a conference championship. Again, watch out for Josh Hoover. This guy is excellent. They can throw the ball all over the lot. And I'm really a big fan of TCU at this point. So they are contenders right now. And then there's the in the mix teams here in the Big 12, and there's 4 of them. I think Arizona State, Kansas, BYU, and Arizona are in the mix. And those are my tiers in the Big 12. Arizona State, they had a slip up, obviously, in that loss in Starkville to Mississippi State, but they got a big win last week on a last-second field goal at Baylor. That's going to help them out. They still have Sam Leavitt. They still have Jordan Tyson. So, like, Arizona State is still going to be a difficult team to deal with in that conference. Kansas, their only loss is to Missouri, and Missouri is playing really well right now and has a dark horse chance to be in the CFP out of the SEC. Kansas is a dangerous team. They thumped West Virginia. Watch out for them, veteran quarterback and Jalen Daniels. BYU, I know they haven't really played anyone yet, but they are 3-0. They play really good defense, one of the best defenses in the country statistically, and they're running the ball well with L.J. Martin, over 100 yards per game. They're at Colorado on Saturday. That's going to be an interesting test because on paper, they seem to have a better team than Colorado. They just beat them in a bowl game last year, and we'll see how they handle them. But for right now, they're going to be in the mix right here on Tier 3 in the Big 12. And then Arizona. Nobody paying attention to Arizona. They had a tough first season under Brent Brennan, who's a good football coach, playing much better this year. Kind of what we thought they would be last year now is what they're playing like. The defense is much better. Noah Fafita is still there. He's a solid player. So, watch out for Arizona as a Tier 3 team in the Big 12. ACC. Two favorites in the ACC. We've got Miami and Florida State. Those two teams have clearly separated themselves out. Miami, clearly one of the better teams in the country, and I think Florida State is as well. As Bama continues to play well, isn't it safe to say that Florida State is an elite team? Yes, there's no doubt. So those two teams are at the top end of this conference. Clearly the two favorites in the ACC, the old powers, Miami and Florida State. I can't wait to watch them play. What is that, next week? I think it's next week. Miami has answers, okay? They can beat you with their defense. They can beat you with their quarterback. They can beat you with their offensive line. That's what you have to have. It seems like Florida State also has those answers. They were dominant against Alabama week 1. Their defense played well, their quarterback played well, and their skill position players played well as well as their offensive line. They have an identity with this Gus Malzahn offense, and the defense has been getting after it. So both of these teams, I think, are clearly Tier 1 teams in the ACC. They play each other in 2 weeks in Tallahassee, 2 weeks. Tier 2, I think it's one team. This is not a deep league. Not a deep league at all. In fact, it's a pretty wide margin until we get to this Tier 2 contender, and that's Georgia Tech. Tech was my sleeper in the ACC that I mentioned this summer. Their schedule lines up for them. It's just a weird league because they still have those 8 conference games. So it's like all of these teams miss all of the other contenders. It's maddening. The ADs, by the way, news came out this week. They are going to look at and then will adopt a 9-conference game schedule. I think that's great, and it will line up with the rest of college football. But the schedule for Georgia Tech is optimistic, I think I would say. No ranked opponents until the Georgia game in the final week of the regular season, and I just love Haynes King. There's a good chance that this team could go through the ACC as an undefeated, which means the loser of the Miami-Florida State game, good chance that they don't get into the ACC championship game, but probably do get into the playoff. So the ACC trending right now towards 2, maybe 3 teams in the college football playoff, depending on Georgia Tech's record at the end of the year and how they look against Georgia. Tier 3 in the mixed teams in the ACC, I think this is where I had to open it up a little bit. I wasn't quite as selective as I was in the other conferences. Louisville and Syracuse. Louisville hasn't really been tested yet. They are at Pitt this weekend. Jeff Brom gets the benefit of the doubt from me. He gets the best out of his quarterbacks and his team, generally speaking, and Miller Moss is there. Probably, the fitting. We got Matt coming up, Miller Moss. Yeah, that's good. Miller played at USC. Running back Isaac Brown. Syracuse just knocked off Clemson on the road, but also they lost Steve Angeli. Unfortunately, he got that Achilles injury. That's a super bummer for Syracuse. So they're going to go with Ricky Collins. He's the transfer from LSU. The loss to Tennessee doesn't look quite as bad as Tennessee continues to play well. Their second half of their schedule does get tougher, though. So Syracuse is going to have to play at Georgia Tech, at Miami, at Notre Dame. So this might be short-lived for Syracuse, although that was a nice win last week. All right, group of 6. All right, here we go. What does the group of 6 look like as a whole? Where are we trending right now? The American looks like the strongest conference right now. So a lot of these teams are going to be out of the American. And the Tier 1 favorite, I think, is South Florida out of the American. They've got the best singular win in the group of 6, and they seem to be the best team. Also, remember, they destroyed Boise week 1. So it's not just that they went to Florida and beat Florida, which is only a 1-win team right now. They also destroyed Boise. So, let's give them their due. No shame in losing to Miami, who we think is a top 5 team right now in college football. So they're Tier 1. Then you move to Tier 2. Again, let's try to be selective here. I think Memphis out of the American, Old Dominion out of the Sun Belt, and Navy out of the American are the tier 2 group of 6 teams. Those are the teams I'm looking at. Memphis came back from 18 points down to beat Arkansas. They were behind 290 yards on the ground last week, so Memphis can run the ball. Old Dominion only lost to Indiana by 13. That looks a lot better. And they beat Virginia Tech by 19. So, like, Old Dominion can play. One of the best running attacks in the country. They've got a dual-threat quarterback, Colton Joseph. He's number one in the country, averaging over 7.5 yards per carry. So watch out for Old Dominion. Navy, we know how tough they are. They have won all 3 games by at least 2 touchdowns. They've got Horvath back for his second year as a starter. They're going to be tough to beat. They're undefeated. They're a contender. Tier 3 in the group of 6, I'll go North Texas out of the American, UNLV out of the Mountain West, and Tulane out of the American. So look at all the Americans. We've got South Florida American, Memphis American, Navy American, North Texas American, Tulane American. The American Conference is clearly the best group of 6 conference. I think the winner of that conference is going to get the group of 6 auto bid into the college football playoff. Here's the tier 3. North Texas, they beat Washington State 59-10, followed that up with a road win at Army last week. That's an Army team that also beat Kansas State. So watch out for North Texas. UNLV, they've been playing with fire this season, but getting the wins. 3 wins by 7 points or less. They did beat UCLA. Is that great? I don't know, but they did it. And then Tulane, they got blown out by Ole Miss last week, but they have 2 wins over Power 4 teams right now, Northwestern and Duke. Jake Retzloff is their quarterback. Brendan Sullivan sharing time at QB. So watch out for Tulane. Try to be selective in this one. What I think South Florida is very good. Old Dominion is very good. Navy's going to be tough to beat. This is going to be a really fun end of the season, last 2 months, as we take a look at who's going to be the best group of 6 team to go to the playoff. Okay, now turned into a long show because we still got to get to Matt Leinart. Without further ado, my friend, my cohort here on Fox Sports and Big Noon, Saturday and Big Noon Kickoff. Let's go out and chat with Matt Leinart. Here he is, Matty Leinart. What's up, brother? How you doing?
God, whenever I get the call to come on this show, it just gets my juices flowing.
Stop. That's you guys always.
But you want to know why? Because it's USC week. You know, we get USC, and then it's fine though. Listen, man. I'll do whatever for you, buddy. I love you, man.
I love you as well. And yeah, I wanted to bring you on. I thought this was a perfect week. One, you got to run out of the tunnel last week because they had that super late game, 8 p.m. local here on the West Coast. So after we got done on Big Noon Saturday, you could get back and run out of the tunnel for USC as they took on Michigan State. But then we also have them this week against Illinois. There it is. We're showing it right now. How about that, dude? You got to take me back. How was it leading the Trojans out onto the field?
So this was an incredible night. And, this kind of got brought up. I talked to the guys earlier in the summer, and they're like, hey, we'd love to run you out the tunnel. And you know how it is. Like, it's almost impossible to go to a USC game because we're on the road every week unless timing works out. This happened to be the time. So I reached out, said, hey, I'm here. They're like, oh my God, yes, let's do it. So we get there. And the coolest part, Joel, for me was, one, I was able to take Cole, my oldest, who's he's been able to do this before, but then I was able to take Kaysen, my almost 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And my other one had wanted nothing to do with it. He was exhausted from Utah. They went to Utah too. Like, it was a whole family trip. And he was like, Daddy, I'm staying home. I don't want to do it. But Kaysen is like, he's attached to my hip. He wants to do everything Daddy wants to do. So in that regard, it was just so awesome to kind of be on the field and see everybody, and just the interaction is great. And then, the fans, like, it was packed. It was awesome, man.
Yeah.
Like there is a little bit of a buzz about USC this year.
I was going to say, there seems to be some juice right now.
There is juice, and that, I mean, gosh, we've seen the Coliseum the last handful of years, and I hate to say the word embarrassing, but sometimes it is. It's like you can't even pack it. It's at times, and there's a buzz, there's some juice, and to be able to run those guys out with the fam right next to me, kind of watching, it was just really cool, man. It was. It's always good to be back. It's so many great memories, obviously. And I'm happy. Look, I'm optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic, as most USC fans are right now. But it was certainly just awesome to be back and be a part of that, and see some guys too. See a lot of my former buddies.
Let's talk about some of that optimism.
Yep.
So Okay, so those of you at home, Matt and I are sitting down. It's Tuesday afternoon right now. We're talking Tuesday afternoon. So I've been Monday and Tuesday are big film days for me, as you know, prepping for the games. And I've watched a little bit of USC just because I've been impressed from afar. As you know, we've talked about this on some of our calls, the Big Noon Kickoff calls. But as I dug in the last day and a half to the film, I got to tell you, Matt, like, this is not just easy front end of the schedule. You know, I think USC is much more for real than anybody is giving them credit for around the country. Like, I think they're underrated right now as, what are they, 22, 23, something along those lines?
Yeah, I've watched pretty much every game this year on film and obviously watched the TV and all these things. And, you know, you try not to get excited because we've had fast starts. You know, we've had fast starts before, and then they don't know how to finish, and then you get into Big Ten play, and you got to be able to sustain that type of play, the physicality of the game, especially in this conference. But to your point, it's taken some time, but it does look different. I think you can start in the trenches. Offensive line is playing really well. They look more physical. Now, again, time will tell when they start to play. You know, you got Illinois, but you got Michigan's and Notre Dame's coming up on the schedule. They look more physical. I think, and I know I want to talk about the run game and the offense, but I think the defensive line is the biggest thing for me. And Joel, we get a chance to see these teams in person, and sometimes you can just tell, right? You can tell the way they look, the way they move, the athleticism.
I mean, that was almost the entire basis of me loving Oregon.
Well, exactly.
They're huge at the right spots.
When you see Oregon in person, like that, they look the part and they can play. You see Ohio State, they look the part, they can play. USC has finally gotten to that point, seeing them this weekend and standing in the end zone and seeing where the D linemen go and the O linemen go. And I'm like, dude, like we got some dudes now. Like they're young and they you know, they need more depth and need to continue to recruiting, but they got some guys. So I think the reason for optimism is we're a lot better up front on both sides of the ball. We're more physical. And then you have, you know, gosh, you have a quarterback who I'm just in love with Jaden Maiava, man. I'm in love with what he's doing. And he's gotten so much better from a year ago.
So
you know?
much
And
better.
so
much better. He's playing really at a high level. I think a lot of it is what they're helping him do in the run game. You know, I talk about that a lot. That I've always felt that Lincoln Riley's superpower at Oklahoma was that they were such a great running team. Yeah, they torched people in the passing game, but they were such a great running team for all of those years. And in fact, I brought it up on our call again, and I've said it on my show before. During Riley's tenure at OU, they were the number one team in the country as far as yards per rush over that time frame. And they're similar to that now. Wayman Jordan is fantastic. To your point about the size, by the way, just some numbers to back that up for people listening. The defensive line, more particular. The average size of their two deep on the defensive line is now 300 pounds. That's their average weight is 300 pounds. Last year, it was 278. That is a huge difference. New guys like Jakeem Stewart, who was basically next year's number one recruit that reclassified. Should be a high schooler.
Scratching the surface. Like
and he's good.
Yeah, he's good.
He's really good.
I would say that I think the last couple years, and it's interesting because you know, we get so caught up in the moment and people want to fire people and this and that. It's hard. You got to build, and it's hard to build in this era of the portal and all these things. The run first mentality that you kind of mentioned and kind of going back to Oklahoma, last year and the last couple of years, and I'm getting to the point because I think the quarterback really matters in this discussion, is he is last year's like they would just get away from the run, right? You would run. Woody Marks was fantastic. You get away, and then all of a sudden it's like they're throwing the ball 4 or 5 times in a row. And it's just like, why? Just why? And maybe there wasn't as much of a trust on the offensive line and the quarterback play and all that. And I think I was thinking about this because you and I have talked about this, and this isn't a secret. Like, he's had Caleb Williams and Miller Moss are the last 2 quarterbacks Lincoln has had in the last handful of years. Caleb Williams was one of one talent. I mean, look what he just did last week. Like, he's a freak talent, but you were very limited with what you could do with him because of the just this improvisation and the backyard ball and all that. He was just so good at that in college, and he could get away with it. But I think it handcuffs a play caller, which we've talked about, right? It kind of plays without the system. So you had that, and then you had not a great offensive line in those first couple of years, right? So you had that part. So it was like, okay, how do we figure out this offense? And then you go to Miller Moss, who I love Miller. I've known Miller since he was literally 5 years old. Very much a game manager. Couldn't run the football, wasn't a factor in the run game. He could, he was a high IQ guy, but he was very limited with what he could do, right? So then there was that extreme. Now all of a sudden you get Jade Mayava, who I think is right dead set in the middle, right? I think he's athletic, he can run. He chooses, he's a pass first guy, which I love, but he can run and make plays, so he can stress a defense. He can improvise. He had a great play last week against Michigan State where he ran, and he also had the touchdown I think we just showed in the highlight. But he's also very good from the pocket. He's not turning the football over. So I think my point is like Lincoln finally has a quarterback kind of like what he had in probably like a Baker and some of those guys in Oklahoma that just fits everything he's doing. And now all of a sudden we're seeing it all come to fruition, if that makes sense, So
ceiling. Let's talk ceiling for this group. We've got them this week against Illinois, and after what we saw Illinois do last week against Indiana, which was not much. Right. The injuries that they have in their secondary. Now all of a sudden I thought this was going to be a coin flip game for USC. Yeah. Like, we'll see what happens. Now all of a sudden this has turned into a game. It's like, hey, you got to go win this game on the road. Well, talk to me about ceiling for this group. What do you think? What do you think it is Illinois, Michigan, at Notre Dame, at Nebraska? Oregon later on the road. What can they do?
They have Washington. Do they have Washington as well?
No, not sure they do not have Washington.
So I think the ceiling is I think they're a playoff team. I think that's the ceiling. I think they can get.
Does that mean 10-2? Just so that we're all like clear, because I don't think 9-3 gets in. So you think they're like a 10-2, 11-1 team?
I think they're a 10-2 team, and I think 10-2 USC has got a great shot getting into the playoff. And this is just, I literally look at this week and the next 5 weeks. And maybe I think Oregon's in November maybe, but you have Illinois, which I think USC is going to win this weekend. But then you have Michigan, you have Nebraska, you have Notre Dame, and then you're at Oregon. I think Oregon's a tough one for them on the road. You have to win 2 of those 4 games. You have to basically win 2 of them. You have to beat Notre Dame and Illinois and Michigan, assuming there's a loss to Oregon down the stretch, right? So I think 10-2 is in the playoff. And again, look, they were really bad on the road last year. They couldn't close out games. So far, so good, but like this is where you kind of get into the meat of your schedule. This is where you kind of say, all right, can we sustain this type of play? We got depth, but we're fairly thin in some areas. The pass defense is not very good at the moment, right? That's one thing that can concern you if against the Oregons of the world, and even Notre Dame with CJ Carr can throw the football. So, but I think to your point, Joel, I think they're a 10-2, 11-1 team if they continue to play. They are. Look, we could say they haven't played anybody this and that. Like they're dominating in every facet of the game, and they've improved in every area of the game.
Okay, you brought up coaching earlier, and we did see our first coaching change. Mike Gundy out at Oklahoma State. Here's the question I have for you. What do you think about the Oklahoma State job?
Is it a good job?
Yeah, where do you rank it? Well, is it a good job? Where do you think it sits in college football?
Yeah, I don't. I think years ago and again, he was great. He's had a lot of great years there, and you could argue kind of now with the way the shift of college football and everything, it's and maybe the lack of resources they have now in comparison to other schools, it's not as a sexy job as it probably once was. I don't know if it's a great job anymore, Joel. I don't maybe for a younger coach who's trying to get into a Power 4 team and trying to build something, but harder to recruit there, I think. And, the lack of, they've had resources in the past, right? And then I think they've lost some of that. So, but I would just say this, I think probably was time for change, in my opinion. Nothing but respect for coach, but probably time for change and to go and just to have a new kind of heartbeat of the team and a new voice of the team, because they've just struggled. They've struggled the last couple of years.
Other big news, and I know I touched on it earlier, but just wanted your thoughts on it, because we've talked at length about this guy and how much we've loved his play. But John Mateer, he's
tough news.
The news about his the surgery that he's going to have because of the broken bone in his hand, and then now the timeline becomes in question. Is it going to be 3 weeks? Is it going to be 4 weeks? Are we looking at a month? Your thoughts on Mateer, and first, Matt, like what you've thought of him so far. Because I know you've been high on him from even a Heisman perspective. And then what do you think? What do you think Oklahoma can do without him in this next month?
I think, I was talking about him week 1, and just knowing kind of the player he was at Washington State and his ability in college football, right, to take over a game. And that's what he's done every single week. Like, the kid is an absolute stud. He's so much. You look at you look at some of these other quarterbacks, like even Jaden Maiava is fitting the system, right? But like Longstreet's come in and performed at a high level. Like you can take sometimes quarterbacks out of systems, plug and still be efficient. I don't know about this one, man, because he is so ball dominant in the way he plays with his running ability, with the quarterback design runs, and he's a great passer. He's a great player. I said it a couple weeks on Big News. He just reminds me of Baker Mayfield, like the whole kind of aura about him, right? Like he just kind of plays with a chip on his shoulder. I think he's way more athletic than Baker was. I think they're in trouble, man. I really do. Hawkins, is that Hawkins, the kid from he's the backup, right?
Yeah, he played a little bit last year. Yeah.
I'd be curious. I think you probably watched more tape on him, but it's just, it's just a major downgrade, right? However you look at it, and then you just look at the schedule. Like that's the biggest thing. I know they have a easy one this week, but they have Texas, I think South Carolina, and then you just get in the meat of the SEC.
Yeah.
To be, you got to probably 10-2 again, maybe a 9. Like I don't know, man. Like I think they're in trouble, and who knows how long he's out. What do you think? You think they can withstand the next
let's put it this way:
weeks?
if you were going to have him, if he had to miss a month, like better it happen right now than
for
late,
sure,
because the late part of their study. Now, granted, everyone's going to be like, "Oh, he's going to miss Red River," but they've got Kent State, they've got South Carolina, then they've got Ole Miss, and then just an onslaught at the end where they've got to face teams like Alabama and Missouri and Ole Miss and Auburn and LSU. That's kind of their last half. He has to be ready for that, Matt. If they're going to survive the season at all, he has to be ready for that. So if you're going to have him miss some time, this is it. I think that their hope would be that he can somehow magically or with the quick healing come back for the Ole Miss game. But go ahead.
Is there a player more important to their team than John Mateer?
No.
Right?
No, because for instance, and I talked about this earlier right here on the show, they can't run the football at all without him. When you're talking about just running back yards per rush, they're 130th in the country. It's a stat that I shared earlier on the program. They can't do anything without him. They don't beat Michigan without John Mateer. They don't beat Auburn without John Mateer. And they don't have many answers outside of him. So with him on the sideline, this is going to be a huge question mark. I don't think they beat Texas. They certainly are not going to beat Ole Miss, maybe not South Carolina. So he's got to get back as quickly as possible.
And the Heisman too, which is a bummer, because I know a lot of these kids.
Where's this race at?
I was thinking about this. I thought he was for sure the front runner. This is just unfortunately going to knock him out of the race. And I think it is a cluster of, you can go a million different ways. I think Dante Moore is going to be right up there, especially with the opportunity he has this weekend. I hate to say it. I don't hate to say it, but I think Maiava and Jordan at USC have a real shot. Like Maiava's numbers are better than Caleb's at this point in the season. And for me, for Heisman, it's like, how do you play? On the road, ranked teams, the better team, like how do you perform in those moments, right? That's the big thing. Just tons of opportunities. Like Maiava is a stud. He's got opportunities. And Waymon Jordan, the running back who no one knows about right now, but they will know about after your call this weekend, because that kid's an absolute stud. You could go Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. I think he's He's been great. I mean,
Beck
so much
Miami.
better. Yeah, I mean, Beck's interesting because the numbers, and again, this isn't a numbers award, and I hate to say that, but he's been fantastic. He's just playing the game. Like he's doing everything it's asked of him and winning games. Most importantly, there's not a lot of flash to his game, but yeah, this thing is wide open. Like Jeremiah Smith. I mean, I know it's gonna be tough for a receiver one, but there's so many good players. And by the way, I was thinking about this week one. You had Arch and Nussmeier and all this, and it is completely flipped.
Klubnik,
like this is
Sellers.
wide open. Klubnik, Sellers. It's like the top 5 preseason are literally not even the top 10 anymore.
Yeah, no, I know it is wild. Man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule. I know you got young kids and you've got your own podcast, Throwbacks. You got to go check out Throwbacks, everybody.
Appreciate you, man.
Of course, it's always fun. I was on with you and Jay the other day. What was that? 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago?
A couple weeks ago. Yeah. Well,
Week
start
one?
of the season.
So
Ohio State, Texas. I had to get you in your busiest week of the year.
That's right.
I know.
But man, I appreciate
damn.
you coming on this program. I always love chatting with you.
Appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for having me, man.
You got it. All right, there he goes, Matt Leinart. Oh, Matty's the best. I appreciate his time as always. That'll do it for us. We'll be back tomorrow. Remember, we got picks and previews for tomorrow and a monster weekend of college football. I cannot wait to talk about these games and break down these games. Remember, share the show with a friend. Hit that subscribe button. We're very close to 250,000 subscribers. Once we get there, we'll probably do something cool for all of you that subscribe to the show. Maybe not all of you. Maybe we'll just pick one of you and do something cool or something like that. I don't know. It'd probably be something. And now that I'm saying it like live on the show, like we'll probably do something. So we're only, a few thousand away. Hit that subscribe button and we'll be close to it. And then follow us on social media, wherever you like the social media at Joel Klatt Show. That's where you can find us. Have a great night, and we'll be back tomorrow with picks and previews.